Okay, we're all there. Good, good, good. Howdy, Xavier. Good to see you. I'm glad you liked him, Xavier. I thought the stuff ended up slotting in quite easily. Like I was actually like, oh, like this is perfect. This is a relatively short section, you know. It's got a really easy segue. Just like, you know, separate this stuff into a separate paragraph or what have you. And like, yeah, it ended up working pretty good. Hey, Nick, good to see you in the chat as well. Yeah. So I've actually been trying to think since we were on the subject of Radon. So I'm still pretty certain this guy is definitely not Radon's teacher, but I'm beginning to have questions about this guy over here too. And the reason why is because now I'm wondering if it's really... Oh, this is going to be annoying. I should have gone for the cuckoos. Damn. Damn. Anyway, so I've been wondering if I've been looking at this the wrong way, and that the guy's appearance here in Raya Lucaria in itself isn't what's important. It's the fact that it's in this, I guess, x-axis, x-y axis would be the thing, right? And that what's most important to consider is not the details of the place, but the general locale. And I'll clarify in a sec once I make my way back here. There we are. No, yeah, that's for astrologers. That's okay, yeah. I'm thinking about like, oh, when do I mention this or talk about that? It's like, oh yeah, it's gonna be astrologers. So anyway, so I'm wondering if this actually matters at all. The fact that we have this guy here. I never considered the grave in particular that important as it was. But I'm starting to wonder now if just in general, it was kind of like, this is just a good place to have an arena for him. And they weren't even considering so much the fact with the school. That's because the Lake of Rot's down here. Because correct me if I'm wrong, this is of course an Alabaster Lord. But the one we fight in Lake of Rot is an Onyx Lord. Do I have that right? Old news by now, but how do you feel about the new iteration of Evangelion being written by Yoko Taro? I mean, sure, why not? I mean, Evangelion at this point is that franchise that will never die. Yeah, they are gonna milk that thing for as long as they can now. Like, it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, wow, it took them quite a bit to like finally do it, but they're like, okay, let's sell out. Let's pimp out this IP. So yeah, so my feelings about it are simply, yeah, like, why not? Let's do it. I mean, Evangelion's always been kind of zany. That's kind of always been the thing about it. So, like, having Yoko Taro in there, like, it's not gonna be anything nuts. Hey, Nobre, good to see ya. Good to see ya. By the way, guys, I just wanted to... Oh, whoopsie. I just want to give a shout out to Smotown, by the way, because apparently he was reading Demonic Archive and he really enjoyed it. He couldn't, he as his words, not mine, he couldn't put it down. And yeah, those are very kind words. So, you know, I appreciate it. I think, I think, you know, I think the analysis for Demonic Archive is obviously very good. Very happy with the art that was added and just the general packaging of the book itself and things like that. And I'm just, you know, overjoyed that, you know, Demon Souls is getting attention because it really deserves it. So, especially after the remake. So, it's one of those things where I'm just like, man, I'd really love to see more high quality Demon Souls analysis content out there. All right, oh, did it again. Anyway, so I'm pretty sure there's like an Onyx Lord guy up here, right? You know what? I've already screwed up doing it once. Let's just... Don't ask me how any of this makes sense, because it doesn't. I also have questions how that and that are anyway connected, but whatever, you know? gonna die by the time I figure up. Like, I'm gonna die by the time I find this thing. Anyway, so you know, just kind of a side thing, but back to what we were talking about. So I think the fact that you have an Onyx Lord up here is, I think, incredibly interesting. When you have the Alabaster Lord up top, and it makes me now wonder, okay, is the idea, because like the Alabaster Lord's about, is where the bridge is, so about here-ish, right? So yeah, it's like pretty close to where we also fight the Onyx Lord as well. There we go. Oh my god. And this is why I hate this area! What if I go from this angle? Also, let's just... You know I'm gonna do it, so... Nope. Oh! I did it again! I like how I corrected myself and did it anyway. Do you hear the idea of Blue Point remake, floating a remake before? And From Software were like, absolutely no. I'll be honest, I don't know how believable that is, because there could be very much a corporate being of like, oh guys, we'd really love to do this project with you guys, but you know, it's From Software, right? It could be a game of like, you know, it could be one of those he said, she said moments where, you know, Sony's basically trying to pass the buck off to From Software, and From never really actually said anything. I don't know, right? So I'm not going to say with absolute certainty, but like at something somewhere is going wrong that this hasn't been approved already. I've always said it's free money on the table, so I wouldn't be surprised if Sony wouldn't be the hang up, right? Like, I'm not going to say, yeah, this is a terrible idea as well. Wait, there's a button here. Maybe, just maybe. There we go. I was like, okay. Perfect. Yeah, so I just think, I wouldn't be surprised if From Software did it, but I'm not going to say like, oh, they 100% are, they're 100% the responsible as well. I can definitely see a world where Sony's just lying to cover their ass for these developers in order to not break any relationships. Especially if it's something like it's an American studio, it's a Japanese studio, like how are they ever going to find out, right? But I don't know. Until From Software themselves clarify either way, we'll never know for sure. But you know what I will say? I wouldn't be surprised if Miyazaki gets asked in a future interview. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if next time he does like the rounds for an American interview, like that's going to come up and it's going to be asked like, hey, there are all these reports about From Software turning them down. Do you have anything you want to say on that? And then he'll either, you know, be evasive, confirm or deny, you know, that type of thing. Dynasty analysis when? I'll be honest, I don't know, Nobre. I have no idea, because I feel like Dynasty's the one where I want the most context, because there's stuff with the oracles and the stuff with the rot, which we also see in Rao and things like that. So there's a bit of a mixture of both. I just don't know. I just don't know. Oh god, I hate it. Oh god, I hate it. Guys, I'm looking, by the way, I don't know if I've talked about it before on thing, but I'm looking forward to the new dot hack. I really want to play the new dot hack that got announced. I don't know if I said that before, but like that's one where I'm like, oh man, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do there. Like that one's the next one where I'm like, oh shit. But first I need to finish Trails in the Sky first chapter and then second chapter before I worry about anything dot hack related, so. Priorities. Give us the Elton John thesis, you coward. No, but the thing with I will say this. My preliminary thoughts right now, and this might be crazy, so again, feel free to disregard this. I'm starting to think Ancient Civ and Ancient Dynasty, the reason they're concurrent, the reason why it seems like their civilizations seem to basically collapse one after the other, the reason for everything basically, is because I think it was a weird case where you had the god and you had the Elden Lord, and they essentially went their separate ways to establish different kingdoms. So I think these statues, I think these are statues of the Elden Lord, of the Rao god, whose statues we of course see at the Rao ruins, right? So I think you had the ancient Civ established above ground, you had the ancient dynasty established below ground. And I don't know if the idea then is that the oracles were supposed to come from Rao's god, and that is contributing for why the ancient dynasties collapsed. I have to like go back and like read all the descriptions to be absolutely certain, but I'm really, I'm like, that's been like an idea that's been stewing in my head, and I'm really starting to wonder if that is the case, where essentially you had this kind of like dual civilizations for one order. And I don't know what exactly that implies, like what the kind of order and everything was being established in Rao. Maybe the idea was something like, an order of rot, where the idea was like you Rao would embody like sort of the rebirth aspect, in the ancient dynasties everything would sink and become the decay aspect. Maybe there was something to that, right? We also of course have like the king's crown and stuff there. That doesn't really clarify too much, because obviously we see like normal cultist guys wearing it a lot too. So the point is that I have my questions. I'm starting to wonder if the idea was that you had this Elden Lord who was kind of like a priest, like a high priest type figure here, right? Clearly there was a focus on the stars and things, but then the question comes, how does the putrescence and everything like that tie in? So I'd have questions about that. We have these like, you know, Babylonian stuff. I think this is related to astrology or something, if I recall correctly. And just in general, there's clearly this idea of studying meteors / the stars. By this point, the founding reign of stars would have to happen. But probably we don't yet have Ordina. We obviously don't have Rhea Lucaria. So there probably haven't been the migrations from the mountaintops down below. I think another thing that would slow that down is probably the ancient Civ seeming to establish its presence on the mountaintop. So they would kind of, you know, they're kind of there to kind of keep like, you know, the astrologers and stuff distracted. So they wouldn't really want to be leaving right now, you know, like that wouldn't be like a concern. Like after ancient Civ and stuff collapses, it makes sense why you would see the migrations and everything start happening. Another instance of the game's obsession with a single missing eye / vision through blindness as well. Yeah, I could see this. I could see there being this huge focus on just like the idea that you have essentially these two civilizations that are being established separately, even though they're all part of like the same pair, right? So like that's definitely been on my mind. But yeah, so going back, like kind of like dialing it all the way back to what I was talking about originally, the fact that we have an Onyx Lord down here, to my recollection, and an Alabaster Lord up here, this has me questioning now, because again, like I said, I threw that out as a candidate because it's probably the best one we have on the motivation for why an Alabaster Lord was being a teacher at Celia for Radon. But I might have to like I might have to throw that out if I'm really. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like it does feel a little weird that essentially you have this Alabaster Lord teacher character, and we wouldn't get an item that's like a little more connected, right? This makes sense to me with the stone, because this goes to the Caria stuff, and that, you know, these stones seem to be a major influence in Consecrated Snowfield especially, and things like that, so that all makes sense to me. The discarded tablet is a very old map of the entire world, so it's basically saying he's discarding the old world age / way of things and is embracing a tree tablet. I think it has a tree on it. A little hard to say. I thought it was another piece of this. Well, there is something to say, which is that there are roots here. So this is that much is at least true. There's at least something root-like about this figure, either symbolically or who knows, maybe even literally. The thing is that we see a lot of plant imagery in Rao too, which that could be what it's trying to connect to, the idea that there was this very plant-like life and death, right? Because this seems to be the idea of Rao's crucible. The idea of Rao and the powers of the reddish gold from the Elden Ring was being used to emphasizing on plant life especially. And when it intersected with animals, it also seems to be oftentimes going with plants. We also have in Rao ruins the snail snakes though too. So, which we otherwise only see in Gelmir. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, no, actually no. We also see them in. I shouldn't say that. We also see him here, and obviously, actually no, they're actually very common. Now that I think about it, like they're not that uncommon. You have the crystal ones around here. You have them, of course, underground and stuff, so they're like vermin. You have a few of them in other crystal tunnels elsewhere and stuff. Obviously, you have them on Gelmir. Okay, yeah, so they're actually not that uncommon. Think I learned that from a Quay Live video on, I don't know what HK, on H, oh, I guess you were trying to say him. Yeah, again, I haven't looked too deeply. I just vaguely recall, because I know I've seen this before for museums and stuff. Let me have this guy come out here. Come on. There we are. There we go. There we go. What do you make of the many female statues throughout Rao? Like I alluded to earlier, I think that's the statue of Rao's god. Or let's say God Queen. So if I think this statue is the Elden Lord, I think the statue in Rao is the God Queen of the ancient civilization. And like I said, I think that the idea might be that the Elden Lord ruled down below and the god ruled up above. Now, why they did that, what was the purpose, how was this system supposed to work and all that stuff, what does that have to do with the putrescence and what we see with bodies getting rid, like there's a lot of question marks still there. But that is my working theory, as it were. Man, you gotta be so spooky looking, man. Like, dude, lighten up. There we go. There we go. Uh-huh. Yeah, oh, well, I'm doing awful. It's another Alabaster Lord. Oh, so this guy's Alabaster too then. Okay. Now let me illuminate you. Huh? Let me drop it. Oh, it just falls through. That's the problem. Oh, okay. I guess, Okay, yeah, you're alabaster. Okay, yeah. Yeah, you're clearly pale. Yeah, I don't remember which sword is which with these guys, so... So I thought this was an Onyx Lord down here. Okay. That makes things even more interesting to me then. Because don't we have... So... Alright, let's see if... Sir. Sir. Listen. Ooh. Sir, please don't fall off. That's all I ask. Alright. Onyx have the curved sword. Yeah, well, clearly now. Clearly now I see it, but let's see if I'll remember it. Alright. Come on, de-aggro. De-aggro. Oh. There we go. Is he done? Nope. Nope. Okay. I don't remember what you give us either. Why are you doing okay, sir? Sir? Why are you doing all right? This feels unfair. Like, you're not even... You're doing this while face down, too. Like, you're, like, all the way deep in that stuff. God, still no. Still no. Alright, so this guy's not gonna give up. There's only one way to do it, then. Anyway, so 2 alabasters then. That makes this even weirder then. Because, correct me if I'm wrong. Alabaster. 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 Onyx. I think Onyx. And I think Alabaster and Onyx in here, right? Am I forgetting any more Onyx lords that we encounter? Uh-huh. Oh. Well, I stay alive for nothing. I recently read some people think that Shaman and the Horns have the same ancestors because of spirituality. I can't tell you how much I hate that theory. I can't speak to the spirituality part, but I do believe that the Shaman and the Horn scent come from Rao, so I guess at least in the broadest sense that they come from the same tribe, yeah. In that sense, I would say they probably have the same ancestors. But yeah, I'm not sure if the spirituality specifically would be my argument. I would be arguing more by the fact that, well, the shamans clearly come from Rao civilization, and the Hornset also seem to come from Rao, and their whole thing seems to be trying to uncover their old history from their, you know, their predecessors, you know, exploring, excavating the ruins and all that stuff, finding the bud and all that. So the only thing I don't quite understand quite yet is where the horns on the horn scent come from. Like, I assume it has something to do with the Elden Ring. I just don't quite understand the exact mechanism that led to them, right? It's kind of like this weird thing where it's like, okay, how did the Omen get the horns? Well, it seems vaguely related to Elden Ring or Crucible, something related, because they seem to appear right as around the time Crucible's dying. But it's not entirely clear. And then the answer is like, oh, okay, no, the horn scent, the horn scent slaughtered in Mesmer's campaign. Those old guys all cursed them. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But then it's like, okay, well, what about the Hornsent? So it's an interesting position I'm in. They're really gonna do this to me. And then we find, this is where we find the crown thing, right? Yeah, I think it's actually that exact corpse. But if I'm not forgetting where an Onyx Lord is, I have no idea. I have no idea why it's so lopsided then. It's spirits, so maybe it has something to do with Rao's manipulation of sprites. Maybe that's the idea, that something Rao did caused a certain subset of the population, which ultimately became the Hornsent civilization, to become horned, and they kind of just scattered, and then they came back as a single polity to build Bellarat, and then eventually to build their tower as they regain their knowledge and everything. Maybe. But like I said, I don't understand the cosmology enough to be able to pinpoint exactly how that would work. Yeah, just land octopus doing land octopus things. Another thing about, actually, back to Lake of Rot for a second. Another thing about Lake of Rot that I find especially interesting for me is the fact that we have the non-rotted flowers here. Now again, maybe somehow this is like a gross oversight that never got caught in development. But the problem I have with that too is that these are supposed to be fallen leaves of the Erd tree, right? Oh no, these are the rotten versions. Okay. Wait. Am I crazy? I could have swore we got unrotted versions. Wasn't that a thing? I know we've talked about it before. Or is it just some of them are rotted and some of them aren't? Am I crazy? I feel like I'm gaslighting myself now. I could have swore these were the unrotted versions. Maybe I'm misremembering what we were discussing before then. Either way, the point being is that it would imply that you're essentially having a bunch of Erd tree leaves falling down here, and it's like, I was about to call you stupid, lol. Yeah, clearly. Clearly, I'm retarded. Anyway, so the only thing I can think of is that maybe the idea is supposed to be that all the leaves from up here would flow downriver and they accumulate here, and because it takes a long time or whatever, it takes those down here to do it. I just don't know if I buy that though, especially considering the game goes out its way to show you how many leaves are in deep root depths. I feel like if you're gonna have these things growing in the rot, like, shouldn't you also essentially have some of them unrotted versions growing on the other side? Like, it's very weird to me, the idea that, or like, okay, having it none along the pathway period, okay, fine, I can buy it. But the idea that, like, you know, over here alone they would have that here, right? It just seems very odd to me, especially when, like, so much else is dying, but this survives. We do have Erd tree roots here, but the thing is, it's never been a thing about Erd tree roots, unless there's the idea that there was like a bunch of Erd tree branches that were also here, but that's kind of weird based on the location. Like deep root depths, I can understand why we get like the branches with the leaves and stuff on them. And obviously we also have it above ground in Langdell, but all the way over here in Lake of Rot, that one does not make much sense here. There's also the tree spirit. The tree spirit makes sense though, because we have the basilisks here. So there would be some implication of Erd tree roots that could be happening through here. And if they're Erd tree roots, then yeah, I can see how there's a tree spirit. No, okay, remind me of this. Is it a rotted tree spirit or is it a normal tree spirit? I want to say it's rotted, but because we have the rotted one in the Halig tree and we have the rotted one in the War Dead catacombs. It is the rot one? Okay, yeah. Because that would make sense to me then. Is like, you know, all the rots coming through. You add that to there being the destined death stuff. Like, yeah, there you can more than justify a tree spirit cropping up. And obviously it gets rotted right away. Yeah, so this I don't have problems with. This I can buy. The thing for me is this. Like, they are very specifically... Like, look at this, too. Like, you have the normal dew-kissed herba and stuff. But it's specifically the stuff in the rot that's growing the faded flowers. That is very peculiar to me. So either they're trying to convey this idea of all the leaves that would fall in deep root depths flowing downriver and they're settling here. And because they settle, at least mostly here, because technically it's still flowing downward, right? Like, technically, if they really want to take this to logical conclusion, they should have put more here. But anyway, if the idea is supposed to be... Oh. Alright. So if the idea is supposed to be that these guys... Actually, okay, buddies. I love you. I really do. Get out of here. There we go. There we go. Oh, lol. There we go. Oh, because I'm getting too far. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So how far... How far is too far for you? Okay, there we go. It's about here. Okay. It's about that, and... There we go. Got a DS question? Okay. Concerning the difference between the fleshy and slave giants of DS1 and the stony whole-faced giants of DS2, is there a distinction between the way the two are described in the JP text? No, both use the same term for giant. So they're both giant man, giant people, right? Like, giant. Seems fairly intuitive that the stone ones are the products of the world pre-disparity, akin to the ancient dragons, while the flesh ones are something else entirely. Not really. This because the stone ones have dark in the middle of their soul. And you know, have souls, like, you know, having souls in general, right? Like, and they become trees. Like, they become normal ass trees. So again, I've said it before in my analysis of DS2 for Giant Kingdom, that article specifically. As far as I'm concerned, it seems like the DS2 giants are essentially a kind of plant. Kind of like the mushroom men, right? They take a somewhat humanoid form, or basically a lot of the living, moving plants we see. They take a somewhat humanoid form, but they aren't human, they aren't human related, they aren't related to the animal kingdom. They are, much like the mushroom man, technically a type of plant. And I know that's also a funny thing, is that the fungi would technically be plants in the Dark Souls universe, but yeah, that seems to be how it works. Isn't that about big? Isn't that about how big an influence the Shattering had? It even got here. Okay, the Shattering is referring specifically to the war. So the Shattering, or the Shattering War, as it's called in the Japanese, or the Shatter War, I guess you could also technically translate it, but that sounds lame. The point is, the Shattering is specifically referring to the war between the demigods. Now, if we're talking about the Shattering of the Elden Ring, I know it seems like quibbling over the difference, but that's kind of major because like a lot of events happen in between those two things, even though they're directly connected. So like, just want to clarify here that like when we're talking about like the Shattering of the Elden Ring, or as I call it, the breaking, you know, because that's really the term that's being used. It's different from what's used for the Shattering War. They always describe it in the JP with like, you know, breaking, broken, etc. You know, not little slightly different terminology. But anyway, the point is that when the Elden Ring was broken, I don't think this is the point being made here. Maybe, like maybe there is supposed to be some idea that all the leaves fell here and they've just been going downriver ever since. Maybe that is supposed to be the idea, is there's this long-standing notion to that. But again, I find that incredibly odd still, that we don't see any of it in Deep-Root Depths. And that's really my main problem. Again, just to highlight for people. Let's just say this is true. Let's say this is the developers and they're like, oh, we're showing at least close to the river's end. This is where, at least maybe before the rot was here, leaves were falling down or whatever. Well, then what about all this crap? Literally everywhere, all these fallen leaves. Clearly for some time. And obviously would have to have started around the same time that Marika's whole thing with breaking the ring would have happened, right? So I find it incredibly odd they put none of those here. Because then I can kind of understand it if the idea is like, oh, we're showing you some of them here, and then when you go all the way downriver, this is another major, you know, congestion point maybe. So you can make an argument that, oh, they also start appearing here, right? It's just very weird to me how they tried to convey that when they're clearly trying to show how many leaves are falling in this specific area. Yeah, I get what you're trying to say, Macaroni. I'm just trying to say, like, you know, colloquially, the localization and most people understand the Shattering to be referring to the war with the demigods, and I don't want to get that confused from Marika's stuff, especially when Morgott goes to so many great lengths to delay the actual war from happening for so long. Right? Like, we even have, like, the red grasses and stuff down here. So it's like, it's not like, oh, you know, it's like too close, or like, you know, it's not recent enough or whatever. Like, clearly vegetation and stuff can and has been growing on the Erd tree stuff down here. So it's just very odd to me, right? That they're limiting it to just that. But again, if we like get over that hang up that I have about that specific detail, then yeah, I can see the idea being, okay, yeah, we just want to show you that this is where all the leaves and stuff are ending up. And then the rot's here, and so the rot has caused them to become faded, but they haven't yet died like everything else yet. I don't know if the argument's supposed to be like, oh, the power of the Erd tree or something, but... yeah, no problem, Nick. Yeah, like I said, the thing with the DS2 giants, I mean, I think they are kind of interesting in their own right. You know, just kind of this weird, odd evolution of life. Seeming to get a little bit of dark in them as well. A little dark that they isolate into a core. Fascinating thing, especially when you see how they make it work with the giant's resonance and stuff. Hello, my favorite little ant friends. Oh, but yeah, I just don't think that I just don't think DS2 giants are that relevant as far as like the origins and ancient stuff to the world is concerned. When it comes to this stuff with Deep-Root Depths, like I say, the fact that they put so much emphasis on the falling leaves here, and yet they don't actually give you any faded Erd leaf stuff, or sorry, Erd leaf stuff period, drives me crazy. Like I said, I thought it was regular, not faded. Again, that must be, I don't know how that got like crossed in my brain, but my goldfish memory strikes again. I somehow forgot that it was faded, and I was like, oh, that's especially odd. It's normal ones. These two giants are cool. Yeah, I think design-wise they're neat, right? They're one of the more creative designs in DS2, which is very otherwise uninspired with so many of its designs. Anyway, so yeah, Lake of Rot's just outside of the immediate narrative of the Nox essentially closing off the river flow to have the break the seal on the Rot and let it essentially try to essentially try to gas Estelle out with Rot, which is like Nox, I don't think you thought this plan through. Like outside of this one, it's a very weird area because of its ancient dynasty connections, the connections it gives us to the historic Rot. Obviously, we have the Blue Swordsman here, which it begs a lot of questions because apparently the Blue Swordsman is also the Blind Swordsman, I should say. He also trains Melania. So it's like, okay, so you're also like, you got something going on that's causing you to be kind of immortal. Now, again, maybe there's this idea that if you're blessed by outer gods, you can have your life extended, right? Like, it's not just the power of golden life that other outer gods, because especially if outer gods are like kind of star, then there could be this idea of star life. So I could see that being a thing. But yeah, overall, I'm like, oh, good. And then, oh god, and then there's the Blind Swordsman stuff, right? So like I said, you have the Ancient Civ stuff up here, mostly around here. We have a little bit of it here with the High Road Cave. And then we get some items that overlap with that, like the Shamshir, which has a similar thing with the Scimitar, which we obviously see nomadic warriors use. You obviously have the Blue Fairy Charm in the water area and stuff happening there. So there's some indication that you have Ancient Civ operating at the very least inside of Stormhill. Then the suspiciousness about Stormhill's weather, the Undyne connection with Dean, the Stormhawk there. There's the also the nomadic or the curved swordsman charm or whatever, curved sword charm, I forget what it's called exactly, that you get here, another connection to the blind swordsman and stuff. Then of course in Lake of Rot we get this isolated merchant here who sells the blue cloth set, so it's like haha, bunch of water here, but this is obviously not the same thing for flowing water. But then you have the Lake of Rot down here, which is connected to that swordsman, so like all of it's sort of like kind of tying something together about some civilizational culture here, but on the Stormhill specifically. But like, is this connected to the towers at all? Is this a separate thing? It's especially weird because obviously by the way that this culture works, they would have to end up becoming nomadic, which we at least see with the one warrior. But we also know that that culture seems to export itself outside the lands between. Also questions about Weeping Peninsula, especially if, again, another weird water weather event that is potentially connected to the weird jellyfish you have down here, the constant raining. Where is the demi-human ruins here, forest ruins here, with the sacrifice that they're doing? So they have this idea of this like maiden or priestess type thing where they're connecting it to like thorn sorcerers with like the eyes getting blinded, but instead of it being a sorcerer, it's obviously some like holy woman type thing, and she's reborn in the land. And obviously there's the whole arena plot line with that. So is that connected? Is that kind of just like a thematic parallel but narrative coincidence? Like Ancient Dynasty, the Rock God, Nox, the Blind Swordsman, he has a connection with Rao. Like, at the very least, he has a connection to Melania, who obviously has a connection to the Rock God, which has a connection to Rao. So it's like there's a lot of moving parts there, and that's like one of the pieces that makes it where like, okay, Ancient Civ and Ancient Dynasty just have a lot going on, right? So like, I understand some things on the margins with them. The Oracle thing with the Mudman is also weird, because like, okay, why did they become Mudmen? Especially when we see at least one of the... Because if there's the idea that the ancient dynasties were kind of like a bunch of different city-states down here, maybe the idea is that they were united because they were technically operating under the Elden Lord. I'm also curious if there's any like specific collaborations between them and the Nox, especially when their civilizations were being linked up until their collapse. So like, there's just a lot. There's a lot of disparate elements when it comes to these things, and I don't understand the cosmology enough to figure out what the through line with all of them is, if that makes sense. Ancient Dynasty has Estelle wing and chest. Okay, so that I'm not sure if that's necessarily connected to the. Let me. Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, I think it's through here, right? That I'm not sure if it's exactly connected to any history with the Ancient Dynasty, so much as with the recent stuff with Estelle. Because it could just be the idea is like it's one of the parts that broke off Estelle when traveling, much like this guy. Right, so we have Estelle here, destroys the the Eternal City, right? Travels down the waterways. Along there, breaks off a part at like this juncture here, right? Where we have the malformed star in the middle between the two, the tunnel, yeah, the Altus tunnel and the Perfumer's Grotto, right? So go down, drops off another one at Ool Palace, down, drops off another one here at this, yeah, more Ool Palace. Okay, yeah, these are both part of Ool. Then seems to come out this way, skips over Nox. Also have to consider there's teleportation stuff going on with Estelle, so it may not necessarily be like the most like a continuous travel type thing. But anyway, the point is pieces are breaking off and stuff like that. Goes through down here. Nox observe that and like, oh shit, look, see what comes downriver, and they're like, oh, real shit. Obviously stops down here. They close off the sluice gate, let it rot. I feel like Nox used Ancient Dynasty like Hornsents used Ralph Ruins. I guess it depends, because what would the Ancient Dynasty be contributing for the purposes of the Nox? Because the Nox's goal seems to always and forever be create a Night Lord, return to the stars, get some revenge on the Greater Will. That seems to be everything the Nox care about. It all revolves around, how are we going to get back home? How are we going to get back home to our Newman lands? And near as I can tell... No, it's not here. There we go. Yeah, especially when you have like an odd placement like this behind the enemy like this. This feels like just casually picked it up. Could even be one of these star callers that we see here, right? Because clearly they're around doing their thing. I mean, I guess it could be because there are at least some indications that the Ancient Dynasty might have been looking into meteors. I do remember that being a thing in the network test for sure. That there was at least something meteor connected that was related to the Ancient Dynasty, but it's been a while since I checked that stuff, so might be misremembering. Their fate stuff, maybe something related to fate, because they have the Oracle thing. The thing that interests me is that they clearly absorbed some of that culture when the collapse happened, right? Like they took in some refugees, right? So you obviously have the ones over here who decided we're just gonna go wild, right? Like they basically abandoned civilization. They have some of these ancient ruins and stuff like that. But they basically let that go by the wayside. But while those guys decided they would go native, they took in these other ones who seem to have lived and died in their society, right? So at the very least, it doesn't seem like the Nox were hostile, especially when you have like obviously roads connecting to them. The Mudmen spears and meteor tips. Okay, yeah, that kind of seals it. Yeah, there's at least something meteor related. So I feel like there has to be something. There'd have to be something that maybe it could be kind of like stuff like Celia and Ordina, where it's kind of like, you know, let's try to not like completely be incestuous with our thought process, and at least have some diversity from other races that could potentially help us out. So it could be the idea like Celia and Ordina, where they were just kind of maybe working with the ancient dynasty to the extent that they felt that their work could help kind of, you know, two minds are greater than one, or what, however the phrase goes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then over there connects back up to, yeah, about there here. Connects back up to the ancient Civ. Where we do see, of course, this is where we see the magic golems and stuff. So this seems to be where a lot of magic stuff was happening. This seems to be where a lot of magic stuff was happening. This seems to be where, if anything, maybe fire was happening. This might be where the ancient Civ golems we see originate from, and they're spread around from there. We see the ancient Civ golems here. We don't see him here. That said, we do see the ancient we do see the crumbling ruin type rocks and things like that. I think that might be the idea, that there was a bunch of these worms here. The only thing I can think of, though, that would be attracting the stupid stone worm guys is Ronnie's corpse, because it's stone-like, if I recall correctly. So maybe there'd be idea that they took interest in that, like they kind of detected that and were like heading for that, I guess, signature, for lack of a better word. Yeah, what a shocker, dwelling arrows. But that's the only thing I can really think of there, because then you can have an excuse that like the Godskin noble or whoever killed them, and then to imply, because it's clearly for like a lead up or what have you, right? So you could definitely come up with the idea like the Godskin noble is like trying to head in to the tower. Maybe Ronnie had the tower sealed or whatever, similar to what the Greater Will seems to do to the other towers. And like Noble's trying to find a way inside or whatever, and then obviously we come in, and so he teleports in to like give us what for. The Ancient Dynasty was in talks with Maris and his bubbles. I mean, it could be that the Ancient Dynasty has some contact with a bunch of arcane beings from the cosmos. That totally could be the case. The problem is, it's like we just have the bubbles, and again, bubbles are supposed to be like, they're specifically supposed to be oracles from God. So like the idea is like they are talking to some kind of god, either an outer god or the Greater Will, or, you know, something that they would consider godlike. Could be route, like, you know, like I said, if the idea is like rouse God, then maybe that's the idea, is like they're trying to get in contact with her through their bubble stuff. I mean, the only other time I can think of oracles being used is in Lanedell, right? And that's obviously in reference to the oracle for Mikola as the coming god or what have you, right? And those seem to, obviously they're very Mikola coded, with their like, you know, white and then like doing like the golden bubbles and so yeah, like I'm saying, there's so many parts that I don't know how to put it all together. I could see myself coming out with a analysis on these guys, by the way. The problem is just figuring out how to handle talking about the Nameless Eternal City's collapse timing wise. Because like it has to happen around the time that the Tarnished leave. So only thing I can think of. Yeah, the only thing I can think of is that maybe the idea would be that the Eternal City had, how'd I put that? It could be something like the Eternal City and its Nox or whatever. We're basically kind of through with Morgott, because Morgott seems to be getting more paranoid and getting more tyrannical and stuff. So it could be the idea that maybe they're like, listen, why are we dealing with these like Golden Order bros? Like clearly everything's falling apart with these guys, and then that's what caused the decision to go through that whole ritual with Eternal Darkness and accidentally summon Estelle and get themselves destroyed. Yeah, that's the only thing, is like trying to like be like, okay, exact point where this happens. Could also be, there's also, the thing is, there's also like the massacres and stuff like that. So depending on when like stuff like the ceiling, the doors was sapped, because it could be that, you know, they were on lockdown, but like Morgott didn't go that far until later, like maybe post Tarnish potentially. It's a little vague because we see the open, we obviously have the open door with for Fia to use as her little like little whorehouse, as it were, right? But that could just be they like remove the, like, you know, they just pried the door open even with the sap, because it's the lower area, right? Like who's gonna care? Right, so could be that this place was opened up by the Tarnish or whatever down the line, be like, oh, this is a good spot. In the trailer, Radon's army goes to the main gate, right? And when he comes, it's nothing there. No, what we get in the trailer is Godric's army. We never see Radon's army in the trailer. The only hint we get at from direct hint, I should say, we get to Radon's army's involvement in the second defense of Leyndell is that introductory cutscene art of Morgott, you know, coming down on Radon. Oh god, that came out wrong. But you know, him basically jumping on atop Radon. Oh god, that also came out wrong. Okay, so like, you know, Morgott climbing on top. Oh no, that came out wrong too. Okay, guys, let's get this right. Morgott leaping over with his sword and impaling. Oh god, no, that came out wrong too. You guys know what I mean. Radon, the point is that, you know, that the Morgott and Radon, quote unquote, fighting, tussling as it were, you might even say wrestling. Oh god, I just keep making it worse. That seems to be the only direct indication we get of it, right? By the way, I love the cope where it was like, guys, no, maybe it's like some other soldier. It's like, guys, it's literally exactly, it's literally just Radon. Like, it's his hair, it's his armor, it's like, it's his size and purport, like, it's just him. Like, who else is even anywhere close to that size for Morgott to be? Like, Morgott's a big guy himself. So the whole thing with Radon and Godric and stuff like that, like, it's very unevenly portrayed, unfortunately. Again, I have my reservations about how Leyndell environmental storytelling is portrayed in general. Like, I'm not going to claim I know the lore or whatever to say that, yeah, these bodies should have rotted already by now, no matter how late you try to put them, right? Has to be before the Gelmir stuff, and that has started in the Shattering, so, yeah, just generally speaking, I think that there's a lot of we have like cool images, and we have cool ideas and things like that, and we want to convey the history and stuff of this place visually as much as possible, so we're going to allow some kind of silly crap to slide, and they don't end up like properly portraying some of the stuff even within that. We get it! They fucked! Yeah, so, yeah, hey, buddy. Hey, Radigan, how you doing? Yeah. I think Leyndell, until, like, a Mikola analysis is happening, I think we're pretty much done with Leyndell. Like, I think with the Morgott stuff, I've now thoroughly covered a lot. Actually, no, I can't say that. We still have the Tarnished stuff. So, Tarnished and Mikola. So, until I decide I'm going to cover extensively Tarnished, I think we're more or less done with Leyndell. I think we've covered enough. I think we've done enough. Hey, buddy. And then there's just the Eternal City stuff, which, like I said, I could do it in a Fallen Hawk analysis. I can see myself doing that. It might even be a case where I just put like all that stuff on like the Eternal Cities in there, and like if I have to move it out of the Fallen Hawk analysis somewhere down the line because it's better suited for another analysis, sure, why not? I can do that. Wouldn't be the first time. A Consecrated Snowfield in general. Well, there's a lot of cool stuff that I like about this area. Actually, I need to remove the reference image for the catacombs here because it's very clear that the rotted guy and everything here is unrelated to the original catacombs where you have the gladiators in, which is funny to me because that means there's only two where you have gladiators that are doing what they're supposed to be doing. The rest are either like I actually no, I shouldn't say that because there's technically like in the I think it's this hero's grave we get one of them as like a shadow dude, so that there's maybe three now. But yeah, the rest of them seem to be in charge of like doing gravekeeping and stuff, but in the case of like all the pilgrims coming to the Halig tree. And then the only thing really relevant, we already covered, already covered all that, is these giant old trees. Which again, I'm not entirely sure, because they're always around where the rivers are happening, right? 1 second. There we go. Also, I love how the icon here includes like a bunch of the trees around here, but I'm pretty sure there's no trees like angled like that. Anyway, point is, so you have the trees like around here in like this forest, right? For this river. Then you don't really have them here, but technically this is like the join, so like we can forgive it. But then you go all the way here, and maybe they were here, but the rot basically would take them all away. And then you have them here in Shifra. So it's like, are they like specifically spawns of the fairy rivers? Is that the idea? It's also only here and in Shifra where we get the lightning warp things. Again, maybe they should also be here in the Lake of Rot, but if they were, all the trees got rotted, I guess. Be funny to think these giant things end up all dissolving in the rot. There are so many of them. Yeah, like, and that's another thing, is that it looks like they are or should be still growing. Like, there's sprouts and stuff. Also, quite interesting how they're specifically red flowers for these here, right? Like, these look essentially identical to what we see in minor Erd trees, but they're colored like a metallic red instead of a metallic yellow. So I guess ruby instead of gold would be the idea, maybe? Would that be how to think of it? And like I said, the room bear thing, if room bears are becoming an indication of dragon populations to some extent, this makes so much sense to me. Because the idea would essentially be, before the whole Bale thing, dragons are so mistreated that when giants decide they're going to cross through Farum Azula and try to set up shop on the mountaintops, Farum Azula basically was like, yeah, okay, do whatever you want, and let the dragons essentially have to fight all on their own and get pushed off, which again gives really good context on the persecution going on there. And then after that, when the Bale thing starts, these guys who are forced to live off the mountaintops essentially are getting killed. Because the draconic stones we have, these 9 stones, these should be connected to ancient dragons specifically. So the idea would the idea would be you'd have to have a lot of ancient dragons here in the area, because from what I remember, you only really find these in Farum Azula in the mountaintops slash consecrated snowfields, especially here. And then, of course, like I said, you have like the odd one that you can find in some other places, but has explanation. So like the Carians probably took one of them along with their polar stones and end up, you know, trading them over to Nox and stuff like that. Like that type of thing be happening. But then the idea would be that, like, you have essentially a bunch of ancient dragons who are probably were fighting and stuff down here against the regular dragons for a time. And then I guess eventually the ancient dragons probably got called back because they were needed for Baal, or they were needed at home, or they were needed for the southern front against Grail. And then the humans, the farm colonies, obviously, Castle Sol took over for there. And then it looks like all the dragons basically got exterminated here because you only have the Rune Bear. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. There's only the Rune Bear by the Hermit Shack. And the Rune Bear down here. And of course there's the magma worms and stuff, right? So that's a separate data point. But the point seems to be that generally most of the dragons, it seems like basically all dragons were essentially have gone extinct somewhere sometime before America took over the plateau, which makes sense because then that would explain why we see the expansion down to Caria right before. I was like, okay, looks like we've cleared out this area. Castle Sol is still dealing with it, but they have that under control or what have you. So let's move down west and deal with these western dragons. But when they start doing that, you know, Renala essentially makes an alliance with these dragons, kind of gets them roped in onto her side, and then under Caria's protection, they basically are totally safe on this side. So the only time that we see Rune Bears showing up is over here on the east side. So we got the ones down there, one over here. I think there's like a few more like over here on this west here, right? So very clear delineation of under Caria protection, not under Caria protection. You leave Caria protection, you may get killed and eaten by a bear. Poor dragons. Yeah, they're not treated the best. I mean, to be fair, Agil essentially has like one of his buddies stolen, right? Agil basically loses a friend and ends up having to like single-handedly like try to harass all of Godric's force in the area. If I had to guess, this is probably like the idea being this is the general area where probably the friend went missing. And then, of course, you have all the Rune Bears down here. Which, hey, dragons, team up and burn this goddamn forest down. That's another one. The Mistwood also has weird... it has weirdly consistent weathered here, right? And again, I could accept like a time of day or something because they're trying to go for a certain feel. So I'm okay with like permanent daytime in Farm Azula, or like permanent nighttime basically at with the moon and stuff in Moonlight Altar and things like that. Like I could see that being going for, but like now I have to question if like does Mistwood have a fairy? Is there like a mist fairy now? Is it not just we have a storm fairy and a rain fairy? We also have a mist fairy. Like, is Limgrave just the land of the fairies? And what does that mean about like the freezing lake up here and all the fairy rivers that it's spawning? And what does that mean for the ancient trees? Like, again, I know it sounds like I'm going all over the place because I am, but like, there's just so much. There's so much of these little things where it's like, okay, I get this, but how's it all linked together? It's just a lot. I hate Ordina. I'm just saying it right now. I just want to say, if it was Moog, good. I hope Moog killed them all. Whose bright idea was it to turn the Wandering Mausoleum into a magical artillery platform? You're evil. Mm-hmm. Next door, he has the hardest ugly bird. Ah, yeah, the deathrite bird or whatever. Oh, standing here, it's not active. It's only when you're going from that side. Yeah, deathrite bird again makes sense. Ordina next door, sorcery given you. I recently posted on the Discord a connection to essentially every death bird or deathrite bird, right? Either a narrative or meta narrative, because surprise, surprise, it's just like with Godskins. Godskins, it seems to be mostly narrative stuff that ties in, really. The only major meta narrative one I can think of is maybe Dominula with like the Black Flame Scourging Surge. I forget what the incantation is called, but with the Black Flame incantation, which may be kind of the idea being like, oh, they're trying to spread Black Flame, and it's like we're spreading the Black Flame message to Dominula. So that could be the broad idea with that one, but like the meta narrative is obvious with Black Flame Tornado, and you get it at Far Missoula, the Tornado Land. So it's like, okay. Something Tyrannok. Oh. No. Yeah, but we're getting to the point now where Ancient Civ and Ancient Dynasty I can't put off forever. Because I have to talk about Ancient Civ and Ancient Dynasty, or at the very least have a preliminary analysis of them done, because that has to serve at least as the basic framework for me to start on a Hornsent analysis, right? So I can't really talk too much about Hornsent if I'm not able to also reverse engineer what's going on with, yay, not see another one of these exactly like, unless we're also able to kind of reverse engineer what's going on with Rao at least, and ideally also with Ancient Dynasty, and try to get the putrescence and stuff off the board. I'll forever hate that in Radahn's tower we can find the Glow My Queen weapon. Like always, Radahn has to be special. I mean, in fairness to Radahn's tower, I mean, it's kind of like the perfect place to hide it, because like you have to do the climbing and stuff to even get inside, right? And that's obviously canon, because they go to the point of having Radahn's forces essentially creating these platforms just to explore it, right? It's like clearly they were also struggling just to get inside. Like, poor guy. He has to rest. He has to rest his little tush. And there's the other one, like, all the way down there, which is like, oh boy, buddy. Unfortunate for you. So I think it makes sense, like, if you're going to be, like, if you're a part of a renegade cult that is on the run from persecution and really just mass extermination by the ruling powers, hiding in this tower ain't too bad. Right? And it's like, you know, Greater Will just had the two fingers keep that benediction in like the closest tower. Like it's not like Radahn was like, ah yes, I shall go in the Black Flame Tower. Hello, my friend the Erd Tree. That doesn't look right. That dome does not look right. But yeah, like, it's getting to the point where I'm gonna eventually have to go back in time for some stuff. Like, it needs to happen. Yeah, I don't think there's anything too crazy. Also have to consider potentially readjusting my analysis of Arteria leaves. So I'm not sure I can still connect him to the Erd Tree / the Crucible. I mean, fallen leaves. The Erd leaf flowers. I could see myself maybe at least editing it to acknowledge more explicitly that they seem to only start emerging after the Elden Ring breaking and stuff like that. I think that'd be something I'd want to acknowledge. I'm pretty sure we don't have any earthly flowers in the realm of shadow. But then the arteria leaves and like the patches we get of them. We get this one individual down here, which is like a rarity. I forget where all these things are either. I don't remember it being one of them being around here. Is it lower? God, there's so much snow to cover. Yeah, I'm lost. I can't find them. But yeah, like you have the giant patches here, and if it's potentially just about generic life power and not specifically anything related to gold, I could see a case being made that, oh, the bigger patches are because you have bigger giants living here. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have a lot of arteria leaves that you can pick in the overworld in Caelid because it's rotted. Maybe up in Dragon Barrow you can because it's less affected by the rot, but to my knowledge, I think arteria leaves are generally just in not rotted lands. Oh, and if so, there may be an argument for... There may be an argument for, like, really saying, like, okay, like, smaller animal life around has just individual arteria leaves show up every... Like, here's a good example with, like, a patch of 3 here. Sometimes you'll get arteria leaves that are just individual for smaller life, but then with areas where, like, giants have been regularly living and stuff like that, that's where you get the entire group of them. Miyazaki just loves that redhead weirdo obsessed with war that much. Yeah, I do again, we were talking about it yesterday. I do wish we didn't have Radon be essentially carrying the climax for our DLC. It's like, really? Really? There we go, Okinus left us. Go away, old man. O most honored, good sir. Our most honored elder. Yeah, so let's see. What would be things that we want to get? We want to talk about Eternal Cities, Fire Giants, a farm Azula for sure. The problem is figuring out what we're going to do with the Bale stuff. And the question mark would be Ancient Civ or Ancient Dynasty. Can I make enough discoveries between them? I guess at some point I would need to do Elden's Beginning and talk about like the Falling Shooting Star. Where did the like stuff with like the the Elden Ring forming and things like that, the Two Fingers and Metter, like eventually something like that. But that's like that's like, you know, so deep lore as far as I'm concerned. Like, oh god. Horn Scent for sure needs to happen at some point. Death Birds needs to be in the table too, because I think it might be good before doing anything with some of these civilizations is just establishing the importance of it. I know there's a theory about gods of order becoming outer gods. And it kind of just popped in my head the idea of maybe Placky's god, you know, leaving. So you have like twin-headed Placky, right? With the 2 heads and all that. Maybe Placky's god left and became the death bird, or the mother twin bird. So that thought popped in my head. Again, I don't know how seriously I'd want to take it, but it's kind of funny to think about at least. Yeah. Yeah, I would. Yeah, like I said, I just think the final boss for the game is crap. I don't think like the idea. I just don't think Miquela's little story with Radon and everything for his kind world is worth having the entire narrative weight held on this. Now, granted, keep in mind, I'm also someone who is not a big fan of the Persona 5 DLC, Persona 5 Royal, I should say, and its added content because it has a similar plot line there with like what Miquela's arc is. I think something like that is like, I just think it's too like philosophy 101, problem of suffering and stuff like that. Like, it's fine if it's like an Astraea type thing where you have it as like its separate little side area, but I think way too much narrative weight is used to carry something that sounds so basic and so obvious, at least to me. So I'm not I may be a little too biased, but I think that it just would have been better if, like, again, if Miquela and Radon's thing was like its own little mini side plot. Yay, we got like some final closure, I guess, on that. But then like the major focus could have been like put on Mesmer, put on like really just anything. Anything would be an improvement at this point. Do you hate the prospect of Xbox dropping out of the console race as much as I do? Not from a point of attachment, but the idea that it gives Sony and Nintendo an unprecedented monopoly on the market. I mean, like, this same thing happened with Sega. I mean, it's not like this is the first time we've ever had companies have to drop out of the console market because, well, let's be honest, because they lose, right? Like, say what you will about Sony's business practices, there's no denying that beyond the initial difficulties even getting a PS5, it's absolutely like the superior console at this point. I think in general, just having the Blu-ray player combined with having a solid game console, like, the only thing I would personally complain about the PS5 is I don't like the style of the design as much as past PlayStations. Like, I think PlayStation 3 was a bit bulky, but obviously PS2 was peak. So like, generally I've always liked the black look to Sony's stuff. That's always like kind of been like, you know, it's my preference. I definitely wouldn't want the story there, period. Yeah, as I said, I would have preferred if we had explored a bit more into, like, if we I get where Miyazaki's going with that. It would have been interesting to me though if either maybe Miquela hadn't yet reached the conclusion yet or whatever, but just something where we could get more with like Trina and the dream worlds and a little bit more dimensions and things like that. I would have loved more of a focus on that aspect of the cosmos, but hey, we kind of got the stuff with Meta or whatever, so it's something. Steam is working like yeah, exactly. Like, now Steam is working on a console. Now here's what I have to say about Steam. I don't understand what their console is going to offer that I can't just get from having a PC with Steam already there. Like, I just don't understand what exactly, like, if I'm going to go to spend all my money on a Steam console, why not I just buy a PC, right? This is sort of like my question. Like, if I'm already going to get like a super expensive thing for the point of gaming on Steam's library, then can't I just buy myself a PC so I can get all that gaming stuff plus anything else I would use a computer for? Like, basically everyone has a computer of some sort, right? Like, they have a Mac or a PC or a Linux or whatever it's called. So personally, I just don't think Steam, I just don't know how Steam is going to be able to make this work. But you know what? I've learned that betting against Steam is so often a risky investment, because sometimes they just do nothing and they'll win. But when it comes to like Xbox leaving the console market, I'll be honest, I still think Xbox has done good in the gaming market, period, for years now. I just don't think that they've really done anything that they can do better. The only thing I would really say I'm sad about is that now that Xbox is basically fully out, like, officially, they're no longer basically any threat to Sony. It seems like they've decided they're going to pull on moving their Sony exclusive games to PC, which I I'm a little sad about, because I would have really liked to see Bloodborne and Demon Souls and stuff get on PC. But if that's not going to happen, oh, for sure. It just scares me that they can pretty much implement whatever business practices they want without as much competition. I mean, nothing stopped them before. Again, like, I mean, I don't, not to give the game away, but like, there's nothing that was stopping Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox essentially just having a tacit agreement on any type of scummy business practices they were doing. I mean, already look at them. They were already been trying to push the gaming prices for individual games and stuff up before all this with Xbox anyway. So it's like, I mean, Nintendo for sure has been absolutely shameless in, like, you know, increasing the price for some of their games, and like, pretty good incentive for why I would never want to get a Nintendo console, that's for sure. So yeah, I just don't think this is going to really change much on that problem. Here's where I stand. The reality is, the only thing I think the console wars ever had any effect on was it would drive innovation for the consoles themselves. What I mean by that is that, you know, the consoles are all trying to outcompete each other in terms of technology, but Nintendo kind of already like threw itself out of the ring because it was always focusing on being the most innovative console, right? So they never worried about like being the most graphically, you know, crazy. Now we're at the point though where Nintendo seems to at least think they've plateaued in terms of their innovations. Like, they feel like now that there's the whole handheld thing, like they've kind of like hit it. Like that's the thing for at least the next generation of consoles is going to have to be focused on. And Sony is already focused on making sure that they're going to have a handheld. I think the Steam Deck or whatever it's called is already coming with one of those. Like, it's clearly like that's the thing that everybody's going to make sure, the ability for you to game on the go. So you don't have to be sitting in a chair watching on your TV. Like, you can do it while laying down on a bed or a couch or something, right? So this is like a necessary evil, Macaroni, just because, like, obviously if you're Sony or you're Nintendo or whatever, and you have personal IP and stuff like that, of course you're going to try to launch it primarily on your console, and it's the best way to secure that you get sales for that specific console, right? Like, you need people to buy into your ecosystem, right? And you need to have a draw beyond just the technology itself. Because obviously, if you don't do it, someone else will, and you know that's its own arms race. Anyway, so my point is I don't think the console wars were necessarily serving anybody in the first place, outside of being like, oh, we can now like try to really push the tech and stuff for our console. So I guess now you can argue they don't really need to do that. But the problem is the console tech already kind of serves that purpose, because it's like, oh, well, if I don't think the console is that crazy big difference or whatever in terms of what they're like offering, like, oh, this this number of gigabytes in graphics or whatever, however it works, to like, like only like 10 or more versus like 100 or 1,000 or something like that. Like, if there's not that big of a gap, I think a lot of people just aren't going to get the console anyway, because they're not going to see it as a worthy investment for it. So, and I don't see exclusives being able to bridge that gap either. And again, when it comes to other features, again, like Sony using theirs as like a Blu-ray player and stuff like that. Like, if you already have a quote-unquote a Blu-ray player, why get a new one if you don't feel like it's enough for the gaming stuff, right? And then there's always PC, and that's the other reality, is that maybe this will be something that the Steam Deck will help at, is just making sure that Sony and Nintendo and everybody have to understand that there's always the PC market, and if people feel like the consoles are not giving them enough value, people are just going to keep flocking and grow on the PC and Steam side, and then these companies are going to be eating dirt anyway. So again, I just don't think Xbox leaving is like the end of the world or anything. I think they've been losing for a while. They haven't really been effective that much. They've only been like a marginal player that Sony has to hedge against. But now it's really just Sony and Nintendo on that side. We'll see how Steam affects the market at all with their Steam Deck. But I think that generally speaking, I feel like essentially, I feel a bigger thing is probably the games. I think the fact that we have, I think the fact that we've had so many unoptimized games, I think the fact that we've had so many like way too expensive games for what they're really worth. I think the fact that in general the gaming market is slowing down, like we're hitting the saturation point globally for a lot of gaming and stuff like that. And we mean like, you know, gaming, not like Candy Crush gaming. I think the fact that the market has tried so hard with live service and is hitting a saturation point there, I think is also affecting things a lot. And I think because development times have gotten so ridiculously long and everything like that, I think that's also been causing a lot of problems. I think just in general that I think it's in some ways it's the best time to be a gamer because we've had so many good quality products and stuff coming out. But I think it's also probably some of the worst time because the ecosystem is in such a weird spot where there is a lot of waste and a lot of crap being churned out. And it's not like cheap crap where it's like, okay, it's a one and done, like it's expensive crap. It is like a huge, like these huge bombs, and it's going to, I think, cause a ripple effect. And I hope the long-term effects of this is like, okay, we have to focus on optimization. We have to focus on, value propositions. We have to focus on making sure that what we are giving our players is really maximizing the use of the technology for the console. Because like I said before, I think the biggest problem, I think, how was it, like a few weeks back or something? I still think that no game has really reached the Demon Souls remakes level of graphical fidelity. Like it's the best in terms of purely graphics. It is the best looking game on the PlayStation 5, and it's kind of silly, right? Because like it feels like we could probably go another decade with the PlayStation 5 if that's the case. Like there's really no reason to come out with a PlayStation 6. And I just don't know if we're at the point now where unless we do come up with some either major crazy graphical breakthrough, like something actually revolutionary, I just don't think a PlayStation 6 will be able to be anything but a marginal improvement over the PS5. And it's just, especially with all the other problems with chips and things happening in the global markets right now and everything, and obviously now oil most recently, I just don't know if we're in a position where I think developers can afford to kind of be like, okay, like we're done with this console, we'll go to a new console and try to drag in and like restart everything with the market all over with some new games. Like, I still think it's gonna work. 4 a.m. here. Okay, see you, Macaroni. Be safe. Have a good sleep. Just look at the development hell and publisher tug of war with Slay the Spire 2. I have not seen anything involving Slay the Spire 2. I do like Slay the Spire. I've never beaten it, but I did like it. But like I have no idea what's going on with Slay the Spire 2. I have not heard or seen anything. So I can't imagine what's going on behind the scenes. But like Slay the Spire is a weird one because wasn't it an indie game? Like was it like it always looked very relatively low budget and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't know what could be happening there. Yeah, in general, I feel like for me, I've been blessed in that all the games I like tend to be in the double A scene, not the triple A scene, or they're even indie titles. So I feel like I've been able to enjoy a situation where I don't need to worry about how like, you know, I don't have to worry about what the larger gaming market is because most of those games I'm just not playing. I think, what was the last time I played a really big Sony release? Maybe Silent Hill 2? I think that was probably the last one that I played, like around the time it was coming out, that I was really interested in. You don't know? It's super big right now as it came out. Yeah, I've not seen anything about it, so. I think 500K concurrent players. Oh, wow, impressive. Yeah, I've not absolutely seen nothing about it. It has not come up in my feed. Out in beta right now, absolute masterpiece. Coolio. But yeah, I think a lot of the Japanese developers are in a really good spot right now. I think there's a lot of indie devs that of course are are really, you know, kind of carving their way and helping like shift the market around and stuff like that. I think a lot of AAA is obviously in trouble. I think we're going to see many, many more studio closures, and honestly, good riddance. A lot of these companies, they got rid of the people that made those companies great, and as a result, the companies are hollow shells, and they've been coming out with bunk for a while now. So it's about time that we got rid of them. Just close them down, remove them. Like, you've already tarnished the IP. Like, you, the brand, I should say, not IP. Obviously, also the IP. The IP of a lot of your game series have been absolutely destroyed. Like, just go home. I've been playing Eugenics. So I haven't got around to it. Yeah, that's another, like, again, like, there's a lot of like, you know, a lot of like big, more smaller scale devs. Like, they're coming out with a lot of games, and they're building, obviously, a lot of recognition for their specific style, or just specific kinds of titles that they're making, right? Like I said, I think it's a weird situation we're in, where it's the best time to be a gamer. It's also kind of the worst, which makes it kind of balance out to being the weirdest time to be a gamer. I mean, look at me though. I'm still playing this game. I've still got thousands of hours on this one. From Software has been the biggest bang for my buck ever in my life. That much is for sure. Yeah, I think this is going to be the way for a while. I think what happens is that I think AAA has to figure out a way to decentralize itself so it can be like more smaller scale. I don't know if we're at that point yet, but I think at some point they're gonna have to look at the, because right now we're at the, we look at the indie model, and we're going to try to subvert the indie model by basically trying to fund things under the table. That seems to be the current strat. But assuming that doesn't hit legal hurdles or anything in the future, that could end up happening for a little while. But eventually people are gonna, like, you know, audiences are gonna catch on, and they're gonna be like, well, you're not making really the stuff we want anymore. Now it's becoming more corporate slop. So I could see that end up collapsing or what have you. I think the big thing though is going to be just figuring out, okay, how are we going to be able to divide all these things so that way we can make maybe smaller, less risky, quicker projects, so that way we don't end up I think Square Enix had the right idea to some extent. I think the problem with Square Enix was that they were doing too much, and while they were still trying to engage with this really long development time on like these absolutely massive titles that were going to have so much trouble making their money back and stuff like that. You're even making money from Software. Yeah, like I said, best value proposition of my life. I got my money back. I basically play these games for free. I basically just kind of took it right off the shelf. Yeah, actually, that's gonna be another thing, is that obviously Dustbloods is gonna be the big thing for people. And like I said, I might take an interest in the lore. That's always a possibility. But I definitely have zero interest in getting a Nintendo console just to play it. And I'm interested in what From Software is gonna do next. Like, are they gonna do like a sequel to one of their other franchise? Please don't let it be Dark Souls. I beg you. Like, I'll you know what? Okay, From Software, do Dark Souls, but let it be a spin-off. Let it be like a Yarnum-scaled spin-off, like something there it's smaller, take us there, and let us be able to just learn more about the world of Dark Souls and stuff, just disconnected from the undead curse and the Age of Fire, the Age of Dark. Just please, for the love of God, let the franchise die. I don't need another story asking me, okay, do you link the fire or do you not link the fire? Bloodborne 2, like I said, I would love an open world Bloodborne 2. Elden Ring's a weird one, because like that would make the most sense, but again, I don't know. Unless they bring Martin back, I just don't see the sequel potential for Elden Ring. It's like this really weird thing, because like the Elden Ring is really the narrative of the demigods. Like that's really kind of like the drive of Elden Ring, is like the story of like all the demigods taking a fragment and going there. And like, how are you going to be able to recreate that basic premise so you can redo the whole, oh, we have to go, and like you also have the whole idea of like, okay, so like eventually you pick who's the Elden Lord, so what's going to happen with the main character and stuff. Like it's a really weird thing. Like Night Rain had the right idea where they're like, okay, let's try to sidestep all that issue and just kind of tell our own story, kind of separate and outside of the Elden Ring narrative. But I just don't know how a proper Elden Ring sequel would be able to do that. I want a new Kingsfield. New Kingsfield would be cool. As I said when we were playing Night Rain, I would love From Software to do a new horror IP. Like from you could do it. You could do it. For some reason, people think some of your games are already horror games. I don't know how. I'm sorry to say. Some people, I guess, are just really weak in the gut or something. But like, I would love a proper From Software horror title. Like, look at your Resident Evils, look at your Amnesias, your Somas, like, you know, look at your Outlast and all that stuff. Like, take a look at all those horror IPs, you know, Fatal Frame and stuff like that's recently. Like, take a look at all that stuff and be like, okay, we're gonna make our own. $3 billion to Armored Core set. I'll be honest, Armored Core, I would love a new Armored Core already. I've been waiting for the spin-off for the Armored Core 6 stuff. I've been waiting for the obligatory, we do an in-between spin-off. I think the problem From Software is that they're not scaling up fast enough with their employees and stuff to be able to be working on all these major projects at a regular interval to release and stuff like that. And I think again, Miyazaki seems to be trying to, you know, train up directors and stuff to start that process. But obviously, you can't just use directors. You need lots of other people, and you also want to do it without compromising like the work culture at From Software and stuff like that. So yeah, he's got quite a challenge ahead of him. From's one of the last bastions of hope as far as AAA gaming goes, in my opinion. And even then, it seems like everyone around them is cannibalizing their formula to an exhausting degree. I mean, I have always been someone who has never really cared to play the Souls-like quote-unquote games, because like, why would I want to play the knockoff when I can play an actual Souls game, right? Like, that is I have never been someone who's been like, oh man, I really need to get more of that From Software you know, content pumped into my veins, so I'm gonna go play like this. Like, I tried once getting into Code Vein, but that was because I was kind of interested in it as like you know, from the anime game angle, and like that turned me off real quick. Like, I just thought it was like did that game get a sequel too recently? Like, how? That's one where I'm like, I just don't get it. I was not impressed. There's one that I might have been impressed by. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to the new Dot Hack. There was that other one though that was it kind of looked cool. I think they even did an anime like for it or something like that. But like, I don't think it ever took off really. The problem is like, you have to have like a really strong writing, especially if your world's not that, you know, not that like innovative or creative or anything. So I don't know. There we go. Yeah, we don't see any. So rotted corpses appear about here, behind the Erd tree. Yeah, not showing bodies as much here. Code Vein did sell well for Bandai. Yeah, that surprises me. I guess it must have been relatively low budget or something. Yeah, this will do. I thought it was fun at a basic level. I did not enjoy it whatsoever. All right, so moving up here. Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize we had burning guy. Oh no, isn't this? Wait. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't this the mimic? This is the mimic that becomes the because he explodes, right? And then he ends up becoming a freaking worm face afterward, right? Yeah, because they talk about plague and pestilence in the sword monument, which I have to assume is referring to all this with the rot. I mean, like, checks out, right? I have to imagine that's the idea here as well. That a bit, I think, yeah, I think I figured it out. So I think what happened here with I think what happened here is you have a case of soldiers have been cut off from consistent supplies for food and stuff like that. The bodies are being left out of rot too often because of the fighting and everything, that they haven't had time to properly bury them or any of that stuff. And as a result, disease and stuff has spread. So I think it's a combination of starvation and fear of being unsanitary, right? That is causing the soldiers to basically try to eat their fellows. I think that's probably the idea they're going for. Is like, if you don't like, because this is the only areas, right? Because the idea is that these were the first battlefields, right? And we can see what happened, right? They got pushed back and back and back, and they got pushed back to their first camp. And then they've tried going up this direction, right? But they haven't had much success here, and they're being pushed back as well, right? And their ninth camp, their last camp all the way over there. There we go. So over here with our ninth camp, obviously we have the whole frenzy stuff happening up there. I think the kind of the point is that they've been pushed back again, and in order to prevent the bodies and stuff from piling up, they're just kind of eating them. They're eating them on the spot right now while they're hungry and they can take the time to get some food. I think that's probably the idea. Now, obviously, there's the meta narrative point of being like, oh look, the guys trying to stop the blasphemy are committing essentially, you know, quote unquote blasphemy. But I think that's the idea here. In fairness, there are good ones out there like Liza P and Mortal Shell. Well, okay, so yeah, here's the problem though. You're always gonna eventually get like one for every like 10 or so, whatever, right? Like you're always gonna get like one of those that's like, oh, this is actually a really good iteration. Like these people seem to have mostly got it or whatever, and that's fine or whatever. But like, from what I understand, Liza P's narrative isn't quite like the same as what we get in say a Bloodborne or a Dark Souls. It's more akin to a like a Sekiro type thing. So like it's one of those things where, again, I'm the type of person where I'm like, I like the complete package that From Software gives me, and I just don't feel like I'm actively seeking out, you know, that, like, I'm not so desperate that I want to go kind of seek out like anything that has something remotely up my alley for that from a completely superficial point of view, right? Again, no problem with people who do that or whatever, you know, like, you know, there's definitely a market for those games, right? It's the reason it became its own genre. But personally, I would prefer to, you know, just play some other games of different types that would maybe be able to scratch that same itch if I wanted, like, say, like a narrative or difficulty or something like that. I don't know. Just how I feel. I do wish, because we do see these seemingly in specific areas. I do hope at some point I can figure out if there's a specific reason for these stone formations. These are more like square top stone formations here. I would like to see if maybe there's some specific reason or cause, because it stretches out, I think, over to here and like obviously over here. I don't remember if we see any of it over here. And we don't seem to see any of it in General White or Altus either. So again, very curious, wondering if was there some sort of specific event that happened that caused these formations to be created. I don't know. Most of the Souls-like narratives are too straightforward. You see, because I don't play them enough, I can't really comment on that stuff, right? So like I wouldn't know either way, right? But like for me, I think the problem is that you have several like what makes up a From Software title versus its copycats, right? You have to have a certain willingness to well, one, tell a good narrative, two, be willing to let that narrative kind of exist out there, and you have to expertly express that through environmental storytelling, context clues, like a bunch of other things, right? To really kind of let the narrative and the world breathe for you. So that's where most of the attention the player is going. It's not to listening to a bunch of expedition dubs. It's more so kind of just, you know, absorbing the world around you. Then you also have to obviously have the gameplay, right? You have to have that gameplay that's difficult, challenging, but not like, you know, like kind of like just plain bullshit. Like it's trying to specifically evoke that feeling of you overcoming an adversity, right? And feeling kind of the stress and the pain of not being there, but you get the relief and stuff when you find like your bonfire or whatever, yeah, right? You need to make it so that way it has an atmosphere. It needs to at least have some minimal bar of atmosphere to it, right? And there has to be a certain minimum bar of creativity to the setting, right? It can't, like, I don't want to go through and feel like I'm seeing a Holy Paladin I've seen in like every other title. And ideally it needs to not look like just generic Hollywood slop. I think that's one of the problems, that people are like, well, look at how creative we're getting with our world or something like that. And it kind of looks like, again, it kind of looks like it's creative in like the Demon Souls sense, where like there's something just off about it because it's clearly taking inspiration from like the American zeitgeist. And it's like the fact that these games are Japanese is a huge influence, because it's very clear that whether, you know, they get artists from around the world or not, or what have you, like a lot of these ideas and things get filtered in a very from a very unique angle. So it ends up creating stuff that, like, you don't see a world quite like Elden Ring or quite like Dark Souls or quite like Bloodborne anywhere else. And that's something that's like really kind of neat about them, is that they kind of are these worlds where like they're inspired in the sense that like you could see like a bunch of the familiar elements, but they're just kind of put together in a way that you're just like, oh wow, I've never thought about that. Like no one would have ever thought that something like Bloodborne would like work the way it does, with combining like Lovecraft with gothic horror and stuff like that. It does it so seamlessly, so well, and it doesn't even like feel almost like it's trying to do that, because it's so well integrated into the setting, right? Like you don't always actively think, oh, like this is the Frankenstein, like this is the werewolf or something, like, right? Like it's one of those things where like you're not always going to immediately be like, oh hey, you know, the Quicksilver stuff. It's just like the silver bullet shooting werewolves or something like that to kill the werewolf, right? And I just feel like a lot of times you have a lot developers, at least from what I see, they tend to miss one of that, where it's like, okay, this doesn't quite look right, this doesn't quite do so. And again, that's fine, they don't have to do everything that From Software does, but like, again, that would be what my criteria would be if I want to play like a Souls, like a lot of times. I think Liza P definitely got the closest there for me. Like I said, I just wasn't interested enough in the Pinocchio world and the combat to really want to like kind of go through and see the story from beginning to end, playing it myself. So it's like, but I it's one of those where I'm like, I can legitimately understand why people be like, okay, this is Souls like done right, you know. All right, so things have dragged on for a bit, chat. I wanted this to be kind of a shorter stream, but I ended up, as always, ended up kind of lollygagging here with you guys, just kind of, you know, chatting about whatever. I'm tired, but I need to go check on the dog, you know, make sure that she's okay. So gonna go do that right now. So thanks so much, guys. Have a good one. Later. Bye-bye.